Hello, everyone. Welcome all to the last leg of the conference. This session is going to be Azure Event Hubs update presented by Kevin Lam. So the next two sessions, in fact, are going to be provided by the Microsoft product group members from Event Hubs team and Event Grid team. Now let's quickly move on to Kevin Lam and understand the latest updates on Azure Event Hubs. Over to Kevin.
Thank you. Well, good morning, good evening, everybody. It's great to be here again. I'd be much happier if I was in London sharing this stage with my my friends and partners, but we'll do this virtually. So my name is Kevin Lam. I'm the Principal Group Program Manager for Azure Messaging. So that's our fleet of messaging services in Azure. And today we'll talk about updates for Azure Event Hubs. So in the session today, first I'll go over Event Hubs for those folks who aren't as familiar with Event Hubs, how we support Kafka in Event Hubs. Then I'll go through some of the salient Event Hubs capabilities. Then I'll talk about what's new, what did we recently release. Then we'll go into our latest offering, Event Hubs Premium, and then what's coming, what's our roadmap for Event Hubs. So today, so in our set of services, we have in our messaging services, we have Service Bus, which is our enterprise messaging that supports queues and topics for Pub Sub. We have Event Hubs that is going to handle your ingestion, your data streaming of events and messages. Event Grid is our push model for doing discrete eventing, and then Relay provides that bridge across on-prem through your firewalls. Today, we'll be talking about Event Hubs. And one of the things I want to call out, Clemens did a great job talking about our messaging patterns and the capabilities of the different set of services in a talk on a couple days ago. But we have these distinct services because they each do a particular job. And we want to make sure that you're choosing the right tool for the right job. You don't want to use one tool to solve all your world's problems. There's no sporks here to eat your sushi. Oh, is this going automatically? So in Event Hubs, we have it can analyze patterns in real time. So as events are coming in, you can go ahead and look at the set of messages that you have and work on that on those messages in real time as they're coming through that stream. It's a push-pull model, meaning that the producers push events into Event Hubs, and then you have consumers pull those messages from Event Hubs. It's a replay append-only log. So as events come in, we're appending essentially under the covers into a log, but you get to replay those messages as often as you like. And then you can do batch on stream. So you have a stream that you can consume in real time, or you can treat it like a batch and pull in chunks of events or messages as you go forward. So today, this is what we'll be talking about in the set of the messaging services. So when you think about events coming into Event Hubs, you're really thinking about a time series of events, right? There's a correlation across those entities that have attributes that tell you something about the events that are coming in and their relationship to each other. For example, if you have devices that are emitting temperature for hundreds of devices that's in your building or on your racks, then you can do real-time query analysis of when the temperature of a particular device is over 80 degrees for the last 5 minutes, then I'll react to that. I'll put a message into a row into a database or send in a discrete event. Somebody can react to it and let them know. As you get little spikes or anomalies, we want to make sure that doesn't go ahead and cause alerts that you didn't really care about. So, as you think about these time series of events, you get to think about that collection of entities as they go through. So how is Event Hubs different from queues, right? We don't want to treat an Event Hub like a queue, nor do you want to treat a queue like handling a stream of events. So one way to think about this, for those that are old enough to remember cassette tapes, Events Hubs is like a cassette tape. It records a stream, right? So a stream of audio that's coming onto the tape. It records in a move forward only fashion, right? So the tape is rolling and you're recording the music or the sound that's coming through. And you can play that tape over and over again. You can rewind, back a minute. You can rewind to the last song and replay what you had, and you're in control of that. A cassette tape has multiple channels. A simple cassette tape has a left and right channel. As you get more sophisticated, you can have 16 channels or multiple channels on a tape. But when you press record on your recording device, they all record at the same time, right? They're recording that audio. But the data on each of the channels is different, right? They're not copies of each other. You're hearing a particular sound on that particular channel. The left and right speakers each play one of those channels. So Event Hubs calls these partitions, right? These are the partitions that you have on your tape. So just an interesting way to think about your event streams. So as we look at the architecture for Event Hubs, Event Hubs and Kafka, the concepts are the same, right? So in Event Hubs, we have an event hub. In Kafka, you have a topic, and that topic then has a number of partitions. And this is how the events are bifurcated. You have a set of event producers. Those producers send events into your Event Hub topic, and they can use, as they're streaming those events in, they can use a number of different protocols, Kafka, HTTP, and AMQP, to send those messages into your Event Hub. Then those messages get partitioned, right? Based on the partition ID, they get put into the proper partition. After those messages are put into the partition, then you can have your set of event receivers that are listening to those to that Event Hub. And what it's going to do is going to listen to all the partitions. It creates a consumer group. That consumer group essentially owns the context for where you're at when you're reading the partitions. So in Event Hubs, it's the readers, the consumer's responsibility to maintain that context for where they are and what they care about in terms of reading, which is different than when you think about queues, where it's a server-side responsibility for knowing when the message is read, then you can delete that message. So in that top consumer group, you can have one set of receivers receiving an AMQP, then you can have another consumer group reading the same set of messages with their own context, and those guys can read using Kafka. So this is a multi-protocol support for your Event Hub. So you can produce an HTTP and consume both an AMQP and Kafka, and capture at the same time. So we provide great multi-protocol support. So how does Event Hub support Apache Kafka? One thing I want to make clear is that Event Hubs does not run or host Apache Kafka, right? That's not how we accomplish that task. What we've done is our engineers have implemented the Kafka protocol head. So as you communicate to Event Hubs, it looks and smells just like a Kafka endpoint. But what we've done is just do that protocol head. So we have binary protocol level support for the Kafka API. There's no dependency in the underlying technology on Kafka in the backend. What this does, it allows us to have an open API approach so that we support not only Kafka, but AMQP and HTTP, and they can all be used at the same time on any of your Event Hubs. So it gives you, also provides versioning and compatibility for Kafka versions 1.0 and above. So we have a single broker that supports both AMQP and Kafka. So you don't need to choose in the beginning, which flavor you want. It's a single broker that can handle any of those protocols. So this allows you really to focus on the value of creation rather than operation. We handle the operation of the broker. You just think about how you need to go ahead and produce and consume those events into your broker. So why would you choose Event Hubs for Kafka? And one is you don't have to think about, care about the operation of an Apache Kafka cluster. So there's zero code setup, there's zero infrastructure setup. It's fully managed as a PaaS service. You don't have to think about how big of a build out you need to make to be able to handle different scale factors. So we can scale anywhere from 1 megabit to greater than 5 gigabits per second, gigabytes per second, excuse me. It's a great way to ingest data into the cloud. So we're already cloud hosted. So you can now have an easy way to get that data from on-prem or from another cloud into Azure. And we have great integration with other Azure services. So we have out-of-the-box integrations with serverless programming models like Azure Functions and Logic Apps. And we have real-time analytics with Azure Stream Analytics. And we have native integration into things like storage and ADLS and usage by log analytics and monitoring. So all these things come together, and more services are having first-class experiences with Event Hubs that you can then take advantage of in the cloud. In Event Hubs, we allow you to have both real-time and batch on the same stream. So by batch, I mean the capture, and I'll talk about capture a little bit later today. But you can have that stream and capture at the same time on the same stream. It's your gateway to the cloud. So as you're thinking about moving your workloads from on-prem into the cloud, this is an easy way to think about how you get that workload running in the cloud, right? If you're already using Apache Kafka, this is, you get the full power of being able to use the Kafka API, plus you get the Azure ecosystem behind it. So we handle all the scalability and manageability and security for our PaaS offering. And with standard, you can auto-inflate those entities, and I'll talk about the other offerings as well. And you get Azure Essentials by default. So there's certain fundamentals that we have to have as an Azure service around security, compliance, and availability. And for security, they include things like Azure Active Directory integration, allows us to do OAuth and customer managed keys. For networking, we have VNets and IP filtering and private endpoints so that you get that lockdown in your networking. And then we have zone redundancy and geo disaster recovery. So all these things come out of the box for you that you don't have to go ahead and worry about when you use Event Hubs. So let's talk about some salient capabilities for Event Hubs. So I'll not cover every single ability here, but we'll talk about some of the key ones that we have out of the box. First, Event Hubs capture. So this allows you to do batch on stream. We provide a policy-based push to your own storage. So you get to pick your storage account or Azure Data Lake, and you get to set different parameters to determine how big or how long the data that gets pushed into those files can be. So you can have a time window based in minutes or a size window based on megabytes, and then we will chunk up appropriately or batch based on those criteria. We use an Avro format, so that Avro format has a self-describing model, so that the schema is embedded in the messages itself as they get persisted. After every time that we create a batch file, we raise an event grid event. So now you can create functions or logic apps or a container or anything that listens to those events that can then react to those batches being created and then start consuming them and be able to react right away as those batches come in. So then that gives you that ability to if you can't handle the stream, you may be able to handle the batch and do batch workloads and be able to react to those batches as quickly as possible. When you enable capture, it does not impact your throughput on the other consumer group that you're reading the stream from. So you can go ahead and not worry about that interfering with your workload. And so this allows you to do offloads of batch processing from your real-time stream. So if there are some particularities that you want to think about with your real-time stream, where if you want to do heavier lifting on your stream, you get to do that in a batch mode in the background, because there's some things that require low latency as those messages are coming in. You need to pass them or handle them really quickly. But there are other things that you may do and some analysis on those streams that may take much longer, and that's okay. You can do that in the background. You can do both of those at the same time. So we also have a great integration with Azure Stream Analytics. So Azure Stream Analytics is our stream analytics engine that has its language so that you can go ahead and do queries on top of that stream that's coming in. So right from Event Hubs, there's a process data, you go click on that, and it takes you to a query editor in Azure Stream Analytics, and then you get to right there type in your query, you get to test your query on that event stream, and then you get to see the results in that window in the portal, so you can do this real-time testing and editing of your queries. It's a great way to even just preview your data. You do a select star, and then you get to see everything. One of the things that Clemens talked about in one of his sessions was a federation and replication, but I wanted to call this out because it's important for Event Hubs that we talk about this ability to replicate your events from either one Event Hub to another Event Hub, or from an Event Hub to another messaging entity like a queue or pub sub topic or some other system. This really allows that power and flexibility to be able to do that. We've made it really simple with a lot of patterns and guidance out there. And not only that, the functions team has done a great job at creating it's kind of weird to say, a no-code function, right? So they have a config only function so that you can go ahead, and here's an example of that, where you see it's just config, where you're describing the input and the output. And then if that's all you need is to get from one entity to another, with config only, you can go and do that. But if you want to crack that open and write some code that you want to do some transformations or enrichments, or other processing on top of that stream, you can go ahead and do that to your heart's content with functions. So we have great integration with functions. Logic apps is another great option to go and ingest the stream and then start connecting to the hundreds of connectors that they have if you need to go and handle those events through logic apps. Another feature that we have is the Schema Registry. So we have a Schema Registry in Event Hubs, and it provides you a repository for your schemas. So this allows the applications to adhere to a contract. So as you send messages in to an Event Hub, you can get that message validated right from your client to make sure that it's meeting the criteria of the schema, right? So if it doesn't match, then you get an error. So this gives you a great flexibility for the producers and consumers to start reacting, interacting, and knowing what the content is that's being sent. It provides data governance, so now you can have reusable schemas, so you can have that one schema that's used by multiple Event Hubs and then referenced, and so you can manage those schemas a lot more simply, because now they're not per message. They're write once, edit, and modify. And so with that, you also get some operational efficiency, because what we do is, for example, for an Avro message that usually contains the schema, we take that schema, put it into the Schema Registry, and then just put a reference to that. So now it compresses the size of your messages that you're sending in, so you're getting some more efficiencies on your ability to send messages and consume messages from Event Hubs. And this also allows producers and consumers to evolve at different rates, right? So you can change your schema. For example, you can have non-breaking changes to your schema and then still be compliant as you send messages in. For example, if you're adding fields to your JSON document, that's not necessarily a breaking change, and you can continue with that edit extra data. And the Schema Registry allows for those types of validations. So we have lots of features in Event Hubs. Here are a couple of more that I want to call out that we have. So we have Azure Active Directory integration that gives us the ability to have role-based access control. So then you can have the different roles that interact with your Event Hub. It also gives us a conditional access, so you can set rules about who can access it. For example, they have to be in a certain security group. And that's going to be set with conditional access. We also have managed identity. So then the services that have managed identity can then interact with their service. And we'll talk about more features coming up with managed identity soon. We also have customer managed keys, what we also call bring your own key. So what that does is we always do encryption at rest, but with the customer managed key, you give us the key that you want to use to encrypt, and we will use that key to encrypt it. So that gives you that extra layer of security with your own encryption. So we never look at the data anyway, but for those who have compliance or more paranoid, you can go ahead and do that as well. Everything's always encrypted, so things on the wire are encrypted with TLS or SSL. Even if you don't give us your own key, we always encrypt all data at rest in our service. We have VNet support with private endpoints and IP filtering, so you can really lock down the interactions with your namespace and determine, which services or entities can have interaction with your event hub, giving you that extra layer of security. We provide auto scale up with auto inflate. So then as more workloads are coming in, you don't have to worry about pre-sizing it. You can go ahead and those TUs will automatically inflate if you enable it and handle that load as they come in. We do geodata replication of your metadata. So as you create Event Hubs entities, we will make sure that that is replicated into another store. If you want the events to be replicated into that other location that we have the metadata replicated, therefore you can use that federation patterns that we talked about earlier. We're also available on Azure Stack Hub. So earlier this year, we released Event Hubs on Azure Stack Hub, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So what's new? What are the latest things that we've released in Event Hubs? New regions. I'm not going to list the regions because we are a Ring 0 service. Ring 0 services mean that we're in every region. So anytime that an Azure region comes out, Event Hubs will be there. So we're in over 55 regions today and growing. So as fast as Azure grows, we grow. We added idempotent producers for the Event Hubs clients. We had it in Kafka earlier last year, and then we added it to the Event Hubs client. That's now GA. It's in the SDK. We increased the throughput units from 20 to 40 throughput units for standard. So now you can go up to 40 megabytes per second in the standard tier. We extended the number of namespaces per subscription to 1,000. So now you can have 1,000 namespaces per sub. I talked about the Schema Registry. So we have that Schema Registry in preview. And Event Hubs on Azure Stack Hub. So, with Event Hubs on Azure Stack Hub, we have the same service that you have today available on Azure Stack that you can host yourself and run anywhere. And finally, we'll have a whole section on this, which is Event Hubs Premium Preview. We just released this at Build. Super excited about this new release. So, we have a number of different hosting models in Event Hubs. And so I want to talk about the distinction between those. First is we have basic and standard, which is our multi-tenancy offering, right? So you can start as small as 1 megabyte per second. What we do is we reserve bandwidth, and you pay for that bandwidth as you go, so you can grow those TUs or their throughput units. They have limits and quotas because you're in a shared pool, you're in a shared resource. You can grow up to 40 megabytes per second, right? We just recently released that. You're only charged on ingress. You're not charged for egress. We base standard on throughput units. So that's your scale factor in standard. And we have 99.95 SLA guarantees. So I'm using a train analogy here. In this case, you're on the subway. You get, we promise to allow you to, fit on your mass transit, as you're commuting, but you get to get a guaranteed spot and ability to move, through that system. Then we have resource isolation. So we still have a multi-tenant system, but it's resource isolated. And so with Premium, we give you from 10 megabytes per second up to about 200 megabytes per second. It's AZ, so zone aware out of the box. So every premium namespace you create is automatically zone aware, and at least for where AZs are available. We have consistent latency, and I'll talk about this in a moment. We're not at the whim of other dependencies that will interfere with our latency. We have very generous limits and quotas for premium. I'll talk about that in a moment. The unit that we use for premium is processing units. So you scale your processing units. It behaves very much like service bus premium with their message units. You can think of that in the same way. When it does come out of preview into GA, we will have SLAs of 4 nines for premium. So we think of that as a reserved ticket. So you have a seat on your train. That's your seat. You want more seats to have that capacity. It's your seat, and only you can sit in that seat. So you can think of that, in your train analogy for the offerings. The next one is Event Hubs Dedicated. That provides a single tenancy. That means you own the whole cluster. That whole cluster is yours. You get to do whatever you want with it. So there's no quotas. There's limits in the sense that you have a cluster and you have limits, in the capacity of that cluster. But that cluster is all yours. You get to do, use it as much as you want. Right? We have no limits there. It's the same functionality or same capabilities as the PaaS service. There's some more features you get in dedicated that you don't get in standard. It works in capacity units. So the capacity, you want a bigger cluster, then we add machinery. When you increase those capacity units. It's it's all inclusive. It's an hourly charge for that cluster, and you're just paying by that hour for that cluster. So you're buying essentially the cluster. So you can also think of it as, imagine what it would take to go build your own Apache cluster with the Zookeeper and the number of VMs. Here you get it, you can go to the portal, create a dedicated cluster, and in a few minutes you have your own dedicated cluster that can behave just like a Kafka cluster. Dedicated gives you 4 nines of SLA. Finally, and so this is, single tenancy. That means you own the whole train, right? That whole train is yours. You get to do whatever you want inside that train, and deal with the seats or whatever, but that whole train is yours. So you can think of that in the train analogy. Finally, we have self-hosted on Azure Stack Hub. So that means it's owner operated. You are the owner. You operate the whole stack, which means the rack, machinery, and essentially it's your rack that's running Azure, and you can upload Azure Event Hubs into that Stack Hub. So it has the same limits as dedicated. You can think of it as kind of dedicated on stack. We provide both a connected and disconnected hosting. So connected means that you're connected to the cloud, and you have one billing model for connected stacks, and then a disconnected, which is more of a licensing model for Stack Hub. And so in this case, in that train analogy, you can think of it as you own the tracks. You want to put those tracks out into some exotic place, and running someplace that no other trains go. You build that track, own the trains on that track, and run it and operate it yourself, your own railway system. Okay, so that's the set of services we have. What I'll do is I'm going to talk about, in particular, our latest offering, which is our premium offering that gives you resource isolation. So what are the features that we added to Event Hubs Premium? It's deployed across availability zones. So all of our stamps that we build out for supporting Event Hubs Premium is on availability zones. These are all new clusters. We rebuilt the broker and added essentially it's a new version of the broker that we have. So we were able to do that, and using Service Fabric to go and distribute that load across the availability zones. It supports private links, so you can have secured access, network access to your premium namespaces. We support customer managed keys. So before we only had customer managed keys and private links in dedicated. Now you can get those in premium as well. So that customer managed keys is bringing your own key, so you can encrypt the data at rest with your own key. Capture is included. In standard, you had to pay separately for that. But here, capture is included as part of the cost for getting a PU. Extended retention. So if the retention you surpass the retention limit that we have, You can go ahead and pay for more retention, which was a feature available in dedicated, but you were capped in standard. We allow for dynamic partition scale up. So that means that you can increase your number of partitions in your event hub without having to go and recreate your event hub, right? So in standard, if you wanted to change your partition count, you needed to go ahead and recreate that event hub. In both premium and dedicated, we give you that dynamic partition scale up. And we have extended limits. So I'm talking about those limits now. So very generous limits. What are those limits? So we provide 100 partitions per event hub. So now you get to have a lot more than were available before. I think on standard we only had 10. Partitions. So I was getting confused with consumer groups. So you have 100 consumer groups per event hub. Before you only had 10. You have 10,000 brokered connections. You can have 100 schema groups on a premium PU, where before you could only have one. For that schema group, we allow you to have 100 megabytes of schema storage. So that means you can have 100 megabyte schema, which doesn't make sense, or 101 megabyte schemas, or 1,000 smaller ones, et cetera. But you get 100 megabytes of schema storage with that. We also give you 90 days of message retention. So in standard, you had 1 to 7. And so similar to dedicated, now we extended it up to 90 days. And per processing unit, we give you 1 terabyte of storage for that message retention. So I just want to let that sink in for a moment. A lot of people usually have questions, about the limits for premium, and these are some of the extended limits that we're offering in premium. Event Hubs Premium is fast. We did a lot of work to improve the speed and latency, and I'm excited to talk about this. We're saying we're going at Plaid speed for you nerds out there. One of the things we did is we essentially rebuilt the broker, and so what we have is a new multi-tiered persistent store, so that the hot path is going to local disks. We created our multi-tier service, so the hot path is going to disks, and then overflow goes to storage. So that's more of a background job. So that gives us much more extended storage and capabilities, as well as giving us control of the latency, because we have special VM SKUs that give us storage optimized access to high-speed disks that we're using for event hubs. And so, with that multi-tiered persistence and that local store, we also do triple replication across availability zones. So not only are we triple replicating, within the service fabric cluster on the machines that are in one data center of that AZ, but it actually goes around to all 3 AZs. So that data is being replicated, across your AZs and within your data center. So if anything happens, we promise that we will not lose that message. Once we ACU, we have it. It's persistent. One of the things you want to think about in Apache Kafka clusters, you have to have a config settings that automatically do that, because it's not out of the box. It's not configured that way. They do more in-memory caching with Apache Kafka. And then as you do your testing, if you want to do comparisons, make sure you're comparing apples to apples. You need to think about a cluster that is replicated across 3 AZs and is persisting every single message as it comes in. And what's super exciting here is what you see is that you see the majority of that graph, that histogram, is showing that all the messages are coming in within that 6 to 8 milliseconds. Those are milliseconds response time. So that means it's coming back to us. It's getting replicated and copied 3 times across the AZs and persisted before it comes back. So, having a 6 to 8 millisecond response time is fantastic. I'm super excited. We see that there's a little blip at that 500 milliseconds. That's a bug. We're in preview. We're going to iron that thing out, and you'll see everything that's uploaded right in that front. So this is super exciting. I mean, just thinking of the physics of this, it's amazing that we can operate that fast, across AZs and persisted in 6 milliseconds, or sometimes even 5 milliseconds. So for Event Hubs Premium during preview, we're available in 7 regions. So West US 2, East US, Canada Central, West Europe, North Europe, Australia East, and Southeast Asia. So we try to hit most of the geographies around the world to make it as close to you as possible during preview. As we get to GA, we'll be in every region. So between now and GA, we'll be adding more regions. So what's coming? So we have a lot of great things that are coming. First is managed identity for capture. So this will allow you to use the managed identity of Event Hub, so either the system identity that comes with the Event Hub or user assigned identity that you create and associate with your Event Hub to go and authenticate with your storage account. And so with that, so then that gives you, a finer grained control about your access to these storage accounts and a different way to manage it. But it will also give us the ability to have cross-subscription capture. So today, the storage account has to be in the same subscription as your Event Hub namespace. But with managed identity for capture, we'll be able to go across subscriptions to any storage account that you have access to. So that's coming very soon. Self-serve dedicated. So today we have for dedicated, you can go to the portal, and for most regions, what we've done is we've pre-allocated dedicated hubs. So you can go to the portal and essentially take one that we've pre-created and then start using it. But if you wanted to scale that up, you wanted to add CUs, you need to create a ticket and let us know, and we'll go ahead and upgrade it. And it usually takes about a day, and we'll go and add capacity to your dedicated hub. Or if you get to a region where we haven't pre-provisioned dedicated hubs, you go through the same process, and we'll go ahead and do that. So that's, of course, not ideal. And we're seeing enough demand for it that we're creating self-serve dedicated. So what that means is that no matter where it is, no matter what region, we don't have to be pre-deployed. You get to take your ARM template, define the dedicated hub and the number of CUs, and we'll go ahead and create it. So right out of the box, you don't need to create it and then call us. It's like, hey, I need a 4 CU cluster. You don't have to worry about it. You create it right out of the box, and you go ahead and make that happen. And so once we do that, that will also give us the ability to do auto scaling on dedicated event hubs. So you can start scaling based on metrics, the number of capacity units you need for that. We will bring to general availability the Schema Registry, as well as the premium offering we're just talking about. We're going to likely put those together and have that come out together for both premium and Schema Registry when we GA later this year. We're also working on Kafka compact topics. There's a nice write-up in our docs about compact topics and what you can do with them. But we're really doing this because there's a lot of folks who are migrating from Kafka who are reliant on compact topics. There's some Kafka connectors that need compact topics. But if you need a key value store, our recommendation is to go use something that is a key value store. Materialized view, you go use Cosmos DB, push it to there, and then you can have all the power of querying those and not have to go and repull your streams to go look at key value pairs if that's how we're using compact topics. But we are working on it because it helps unblock some customers. We are going to be doing data replication. So data replication across geos. So then you don't have to worry about that federation. Many people have been asking for this for a while. Just to be clear, we have not been kicking this down the road. All that work that we've done in premium was all the prereq work that we needed to do for data replication. So that's multi-tiered storage I talked about, and all the engineering and design that went into that was our prerequisite and the kind of our path to data replication. So we've actually been working on that for quite some time, and to make sure that's efficient and fast and reliable, takes some good engineering work. And finally, the release that we have on Azure Stack Hub was missing the capture capability. We were waiting for dependency on Azure Stack Hub to come through. It's finally come through, so we're going to go ahead and kind of wrap that up and add capture to event hubs on Azure Stack Hub. Okay, perfect. So this is the end of my talk. And if you want access to some resources, you can, you have a Get Started doc we have, if you want to look at what we've done for premium, you can go to the short link, aka.ms/WAC Event Hubs Premium. Very easy to remember. If you want to ask us questions, go ahead and send an email to askeventhubs@microsoft.com. We have samples on GitHub and throughout our docs. So thank you very much. I'll leave this here just for one more second. And great. So now we'll go ahead and answer some questions. I think I left about 4 or 5 minutes for questions. And SJ, do you have any questions that I should start looking at?
Yeah, we have multiple questions. We can go through each of them. The first question that we have is about data persistency. So Kevin, do you want to take that?
Is there any way to use Event Hub as a persistent data storage? Don't do that. Why would you want to do that? Event Hubs is your means for dealing with ingesting torrents of data to go do something with them, right? Don't let them stick around forever in your Event Hub. That doesn't make any sense, because that means you're constantly pulling as a stream that data. Now, of course, we support, like with dedicated and premium, up to 90 days. But the intent, Clemens had a great slide about the value of data based on the period of time, where the highest value is in the very short period of seconds, and as it gets staler, then it gets less interesting, and then you should think about putting it into the proper data store. So yes, you can, but don't. Okay. How does Event Hubs differ from other distributed log systems as a PaaS like AWS Kinesis or Google PubSub, or are the underpinning tech the same? For AWS Kinesis, they're conceptually the same. Kinesis doesn't have as rich of a set of offerings that we do in Event Hubs. It doesn't provide a Kafka interface. You have to use another AWS offering to actually get kind of a managed Kafka cluster to doing that. They have a separate service to do, it's called Firehose, to do capture. Ours is built in. So there's a lot of built-in capabilities that we have in Event Hubs that is kind of goes beyond Kinesis, but Kinesis is kind of like the similar service on the AWS side. Google PubSub is kind of I don't know what to call it. It does kind of, they say it does everything, right? It does queues, it does PubSub, it does streaming. Anything that does everything is usually not good at any particular thing. So I'd be mindful of that as you look at the Google PubSub. The underlying technology for all those are distinct. They built their own underlying infrastructure. Is Event Hubs with Kafka endpoint or Confluent Cloud, which is available on the marketplace? So the Event Hubs is always available with the Kafka endpoint. You don't have to do anything. You create an Event Hub, you get Kafka, right? So you get to go and talk to our Event Hub using Kafka. Confluent Cloud is a separate offering from a third party that is available in the marketplace, and that's their offering, which is distinct. Maybe Steph Jan is talking about we can do a little bit better job in the marketplace at when you do a search for those, that the things that you really care about pop up, and that is something on our backlog to work with the marketplace guys to make that better. Does Event Hub support transactions natively? If not, can transactions be achieved with the Kafka facade on the Event Hub? So there's Kafka transactions that is also on our backlog, but I didn't want to put it on our list because I wanted to note that we're doing capture first, but there are other Kafka capabilities that we'll do. But you want to think about, if you're thinking don't do distributed transactions in the cloud, don't do it. It's not, this is the 21st century. That's not how the cloud works. If the usage of Kafka libraries left Kafka Stream possible with Event Hubs for Kafka, what are the most important features missing compared to the classic Kafka environment? So yes, you can use things like Liberty Kafka to talk to an Event Hub. Like I said, we support the Kafka protocol. So you can, anything that supports the Kafka 1.0 protocol or above, you get to use that library and talk to us. Some of the capabilities I talked about for that are missing for Kafka in terms of either that are part of the Kafka ecosystem, not necessarily part of Kafka. Sometimes those things get a little conflated, but we talked about compact topics, streams, and transactions for Kafka. Is there anything else I was missing, SJ, in that list? I think those are the three.
One of them is about Kafka, say, compression, which we plan to support in the coming months. But yeah, that's currently not supported feature.
Thank you for reminding about that one. I think we're out of time. Lex, are we out of time? Or can we keep on going?
Yeah, we have crossed the time, Kevin, but you can still answer, and this recording will be there for people when they come back and listen.
Great. Oh, I think I only have one more question anyway, which is any plans to enable Azure Event Hubs anywhere through Azure Arc Kubernetes deployment? We did a lot of effort to get Event Hubs into Azure Stack Hub. So that was our first go around at working on the edge. There are a number of things that we have to do before we can be Kubernetes deployable. So that will take some time for us to go ahead and accomplish that. So that was the last question I think I had on the list. Is there any pending? No, but that's it. So thank you, everybody. It was fantastic being here at Integrate and talking to you all. And hopefully next year I get to see you face to face and we get to interact and talk, after the conference and do all that fun stuff and perhaps have a pint at the pub. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Covey.co